I think the most important thing about building your personal brand is to make sure that all along the way you are you and that you are standing for you, because the people around you will all have opinions about you and who you are and what your brand should be. But that comes out of really them and their story. They're branding you out of their story. So you want to make sure that you get to, if you're going to build your personal brand and you're going to get yourself out there, that you partner up with somebody like Hirsch who can see you for who you are and who can cut through his own clutter and really be able to see who you are and what your genius is and how you want to show up in the world. Because if your brand isn't kind of polarizing and it doesn't speak to some people, the right people, and keep away the people that you aren't perfect for your brand, then your brand's not doing its job. And so you got to be you. You can't be anything but you.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about.
Yes.
Your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redmond.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
In the hot seat today on Yes Brand is my friend Virginia Muzquiz. She is known as the Referral Diva. She can add $250,000 to your income. And most importantly, I think she knows how to build relationships, maintain relationships, and make sure that those relationships are mutually profitable. And there are probably better and more intricate ways to say that, but I think that that's really what 3 decades in business has taught you, Virginia. And we're going to learn more about these relationships and the extent to which they can really change your life as we talk today. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here, Hirsch.
It's great to finally have you on Yes Brand. And we'll talk about the brand part later in the interview. But talk a little bit, if you would, about how you got into this, how you created this business, and what it means to you personally.
So whenever anybody asks me that, I want to break into song and sing When I Was a Young Warthog, like from The Lion King.
Yeah.
I've been a people person since I was a kid. I was always the person that wanted to make all the friends and wanted to be the center of attention and wanted to be surrounded by people. I've always wanted to teach and lead people. My real career, when I started out, my early career was as a teacher. I was a high school and then a university teacher. And then when I had my kids, I decided that I wanted to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom. And then I quickly got extremely bored of being a stay-at-home mom. And a friend of mine came by and said, if you sign up and I sign up, Julie will win a car. So of course I had to become an independent Mary Kay beauty consultant, because God forbid that Julie should have to ride her bicycle to work. And I joined with the promise that I would never sell anything to anyone, but you do not get accolades for not selling anything when you're in direct sales. So in 90 days, I was the #1 sales representative in Mary Kay. And I really loved it because it combined getting together with women, making girlfriends, having friends, and selling product that made everybody pretty. And we all felt great. And it was really great until it wasn't. And then when it wasn't, I got a job at a Sylvan Learning Center, and we jumped into the No Child Left Behind space, which is that government program that decided that all the schools in America were failing. And so all of the schools would have to pay their title money to outside tutors to get all these kids caught up. And that would be a conversation for a whole other day. But I was very good at it because I had a lot of clout in the academic arena. And the first year I did it was really hard work. It was in the urban environment. For those of you who are listening, I am blonde, I am blue-eyed, and I am translucent. So I am not exactly the model of urban, urban essence. So I quickly learned that I had to borrow influence from the people who did have influence, pastors of churches, directors of community centers, directors of food pantries. And I started realizing that these people weren't talking to each other. And so they all had these excess assets that they could share. And if they all shared, they could do bigger work together than they could do in their little silos. Created community structures. And then lo and behold, our program grew because these people would say, you've helped us so much. How can we help you? And the one thing I knew was that I couldn't ask them for everything. So I asked them for one thing, and that was third graders. And I picked third graders because they go to all the classes. Where else is an 8-year-old going to go? They made massive amounts of progress. How far behind could they be? And they all had siblings. And so when that third grader was happy and that third grader was making progress in school, mom thought, we're going to put all the kids in that program. And by the end of that program that started out at exactly $0 in 2005, when I left there in 2012, we had done that year, we did $2.5 million in sales. And I did it all without an advertising budget. And I did it all by word of mouth. And I did it by building relationship and creating coalitions. Then the lady who owned the Business Network International franchises, we had met when I was a Mary Kay lady because I was a member, called me up and said, oh my gosh, could you teach entrepreneurs how to do that? And I thought, yeah, why not? That's exactly how I grew. I taught 10 people how to build a $250,000 business unit, and the 10 of us did our job and we landed at the 2.5 million. So that's why I say I can help people create a $250,000 revenue stream using other people's networks and influence, because that's really how I started out. So I quantified it, I qualified it, I've paid bazillions and gazillions of coaches, hats off to Callan Rush, Justin Livingston, Jay Facette, Steve Olsher, like just tons of people that have poured into me over the years. And now that's what I do is I help my clients add that 6-figure revenue stream by leveraging the relationships that they have and the relationships that those people have.
And that, by the way, is unique in and of itself, because there are a lot of people who work on networking, let's say, or relationships, or, there's a couple things I want to dig into there. One is that, and I've seen you in action. So I've been at events with you. We've traveled together, and I've been able to see you kind of weave this excitement around, but it's not around yourself, although you have a tremendous energy and you bring it to it, but you really are weaving people together and weaving those relationships together in a way that is successful for your clients. So I want to talk more about your clients and some very interesting dynamics that occurred when you were sick and you couldn't work. And the other part is this kind of coaching as normalcy. A lot of people who don't have a lot of experience with coaches think they are working with coaches because something's wrong, or they're working with coaches because they don't know something and they're failing at something, or there's a kind of a stigma that you need a coach, or successful people don't need a coach. That's really what it is, that successful people don't need a coach. And I have to say that the more successful people I meet and the more successful I become, the more respect I have for coaching and for coaches, and the more I feel even I need them. So what are your thoughts on that?
I believe in leverage. Okay. So productivity is getting more done in less time. Okay. We're getting more done with the time that you have, right? Leverage is getting more productivity with less effort. So
yeah,
I believe in leverage. And so when you're thinking about, when I'm thinking about, am I going to do a thing? I'm thinking, how much juice can I squeeze out of this lemon? Right. And so from a strictly networking standpoint, or what I call networking is not a thing that I do. I do something called nexus building, which is a little different, but from a completely nexus building perspective, which is who are the 150 people that are promoting, connecting, and referring me on a regular basis. One of the quickest ways to network up, to get higher quality people in your world, is to hire a coach and then give that coach an amazing success story. So if I'm going to coach with you, Hirsch, You're going to tell me jump and I'm going to say how high. You're going to tell me turn and I'm going to say which direction. You're going to tell me, stand on my head. I'm going to ask you how long, right? If I can't stand on my head, I'm going to be like, can you break that down for me? Because standing on my head, it's just not working for me right now. Don't understand what I'm missing. Right. And then you're going to be like, well, Virginia, your core is too weak. We got to strengthen up your core. So let's back up the bus and get that so you can stand on your head so you can do the next thing. And I'm going to give you a great story. If I'm going to pay you money, I'm going to give you a great story. When I give you a great story, what do? You talk about how great I am. Oh my God, I had this client. Her name's Virginia. That woman, she did this. She did everything I said. She got a great result. You talk about me. The more you talk about me, the more your tribe wants to know me. The more your tribe wants to know me, the more networked I am. So for me, getting a coach is a big part of being successful and adding quality to the nexus that you operate in. And on the other hand, have you ever had a V8 moment, like face palm, in your own area of expertise? Of course, because if you don't have a mirror, you can't tell if there's lipstick on your teeth or your hair is out of place. Somebody's got to do that. And there really isn't a mirror for you when you are in business for yourself. In the entrepreneurial journey, there isn't a mirror that gives you lead time, right? You can look at your lags. That's your A/B split testing and your data and how many opt-ins did you get and what was your conversion. But all of that is lagging data, correct?
Yeah.
So in order to get an eye on your leading data, on the leading indicators that drive those lagging indicators, somebody's got to look at it, and you can't proofread your own book.
Right.
So that's why for me, having a coach, and I have multiple coaches, Hirsch. I've got a coach that helps me with my speaking. I've got a coach that helps me with my mindset. I've got a spiritual guide. I've got, oh my gosh, I have a therapist, like I have a counselor.
Yeah.
I have a writing coach. Like I have all kinds of coaches in my life that are thought partners and that help me be better, because the key to being the best coach you can be is to always make yourself better and to model that behavior. How can you possibly expect your clients to follow through if you can't point to yourself following through?
Yeah. And I put it this way, is that, we can't see the back of our own head. We don't know it or have the perspective of being outside ourselves. It just doesn't exist. And so how can we can be proud of ourselves, and we can look, kind of with insight at something, or with, foresight or reflection, but we just are not outside ourselves. So
Right.
it really helps us to have people whose expertise isn't just whatever their expertise is, writing or spirituality or whatever it may be, but who has the perspective that we lack and can look at us and observe. So now tell the audience a little bit about your experience where your clients had to run your company for you.
This is really funny. So I don't know when it was. It might have been July. It was the summer of, I don't know, 2018 or something, 2019. This friend of mine, Scott Conway, is a grandmaster, and he had a dojo in California. And so he's on Vegas on a date, and somebody drives a car into the plate glass window of his dojo, just takes out the whole front side of his dojo, right? And I see it on Facebook, and I call him and I'm like, hey, did you know there's a car in your dojo? And he's like, yeah, the students have it. Like they're all there. I called the credit card company, Andre's, whatever, right? But they're all his clients.
Mm-hmm.
And they clean up the whole place and they board up the whole place. And the next day they hold classes. And while he's out of town, his black belts, who are his clients, are teaching class. Mm-hmm. So basically he's out of town, tragedy strikes, and his students. Oh, and then there were people that showed up that were friends of the students. Showed up to do something. Like it wasn't just his students. It was like the friends of the students showed up. And I was like,
right.
I said, that's marketable, right? And he said, well, many have tried. And I said, well, have you written a book? And he's like, yeah, I wrote this book. It's called The Ohana Way. And I look at my bedstand, and the book is on my bedstand, but I haven't read it yet. And I'm like, are you that Scott Conway? He's like, yeah, like that's my book. So I read the book and I realize that there is a system to creating a community, to turning your your clients not into raving fans, but into a community that belongs to you, right? They're a community that follow you. They're a community that love you. They're a community that holds you up. They're a community that has your back. They're a community that lends their strength. They don't complain about your weaknesses. They shore you up and they make things possible. And so thanks to Scott Conway, and he came into the community and taught us all Ohana, and Jenny Bellinger got it tattooed on her arm. And I had built a community very much like that. And in January of 2022, I got Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I was in absolute agony. So I had basically my immune system turned against my nervous system. So my immune system was attacking my nerves, and it didn't feel good. So I was basically being electrocuted from the inside out.
Oh my God. What instigates that? What is the?
I'm not going to say because it's going to be really controversial.
Okay.
Let's just say in 2022, you know what was going on.
Right.
And yeah. So it was a medical intervention that I was forced to undergo.
Okay.
And it just, I'm just one of the 0.5% of people that had this adverse situation.
Right.
This particular one. And so for 17 days, I couldn't walk under my own power. I couldn't eat. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't shower. I had no function. I just laid around and hurt. And I had just closed a cohort of about 30 people into my referral engine program.
Wow.
But I couldn't teach it. I didn't have the capacity to teach it. So, but I did have a few clients that had been with me. Jenny Bellinger had been with me 6 years already. Kimberly Whitecamp had been with me for a couple. Scott had been with me for several. And so they picked up the slack and taught the classes for me and delivered. And my response to that was I brought them all the next year on the marketers cruise. So we all traveled.
Okay. Yeah. And that's where I met Scott and Jenny. That's crazy. And it's also that, I mean, I love a few of the things that you have thrown out during the telling of this story. One of them being community, and also looking at your team, your coaches as thought partners, because thought leadership is a very, obviously very familiar concept to anybody listening, but thought partners is really much more what it's about. The idea that we help each other, that we become a collective of skills and heart and thought, and that it all kind of works together. And I love the fact that building that community gives us, I think, what we're all, if you ask people what are they after, a lot of times they'll say freedom, but I think more than that, on a deeper level, it's peace of mind. It's some kind of peace of mind that things are going to be okay. Because we're all like this in our circles. We're super diligent and responsible. We work really hard and we want to deliver. We're over deliverers. And if we can't for some reason, what happens? It's like it's hard enough just to rely on a team within a company, but that's not really what happened to Scott or what happened to you. What happened was this over delivery, I think, of support. In other words, you have a staff, people work for you, they'll cover for you while you're out, but they can't necessarily teach your class or bring the same level of enthusiasm or commitment or excitement to something, because that's not where they're at yet. They would have their own classes. In this case, everybody came together, and it must have just reinforced for you how much you were doing right, because that's not typical. That is not a typical. So what happened after that?
Well, I mean, after that, basically I had 2 years of rehab. I had to learn how to walk again, and I had to learn how to feed myself again. And I had to get all my muscle strength back. I lost most of my muscle mass. And so I'm super healthy now. I'm great. They told me I wouldn't, but they're like, you
Yeah.
don't recover from this. And I was just like, ha ha ha, you don't know me very well.
Yeah.
And so I think we met on the marketers cruise that was 1 year later.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's when I was, I went up to the Damahagua Falls in the Dominican and jumped into the river. And everybody's like, you can barely walk. Why are you doing that? And that was really hard for me because normally I would have been I was very fit. I was a fitness instructor back in the day, working out all the time. And I was like dead last getting up there, so it was really, really hard. And it was hard to take emotionally. They said, why are you doing this? And I said, because I'm not dead. That was like my reason to do everything. They're like, why are you doing that? Because I'm not dead. Right.
Yeah.
So, personally, last November, a little under a year ago, I went to Peru and scaled Machu Picchu. So that was great. And it really has propelled me into a whole new world of spirituality, into an entire new outlook on life and business and priorities and self-love, self-appreciation, the ability to really understand where other people are, to hear the narratives that we tell ourselves. And I think the most fascinating thing for me is I really have been diving into the work of Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, and he has an entire library of Toltec wisdom and, that native cultural wisdom. And one of the things that's super interesting for me is to understand this concept that he calls domestication, which is pretty much, Joe Dispenza talks about how your present is actually you reenacting your past most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this whole idea of, we just have underlying NLP as the programs that we have running under the surface, and having this really cool opportunity to be aware of feeling a thing or noticing a thing or having a response or a reaction to a thing and being really curious about where that came from, as opposed to having a response or an outward response. Like, it's all Hirsch's fault. Hirsch said this and now I'm all upset. Right.
Right.
Well, no, Hirsch said something that was like pressing the button on an old program.
Yeah.
But that's where we get pushing my buttons from. Right.
Right.
So that's been really interesting. And it's also really driven me to think about the fact that so many people hire coaches. I think the number is something like, of all of the people that hire a coach, only about 7% ever get the result promised. And if you ask the coaches, they'll tell you it's because people don't do the program. Well, they don't do it.
Right.
And that's probably true. But my question is, okay, then why did we sell it to them? And then the other question that I have is, so what do we do to help them get through it?
Yeah.
Right. How do we create circumstances where people's intentions become their commitments and their desires become their outcomes? And that's been, I think, the maybe the biggest shift in not my material's my material, right? But how I approach working with people to help them see why they are where they are and how they can rewrite the story, rewrite the narrative, and take a step out of the space. It's kind of funny if you think about it. If you're in a Jeep and you're stuck in the mud and you just keep trying to get unstuck in the mud, there's a way out, right? Get out of the Jeep and walk away.
Right.
There's a way. There's another way out. We don't have to stay stuck in that rut.
You make a very good point about coaching. One of the first things, and I don't consider myself a coach. I consider myself a consultant, but the fact is there is a good deal of coaching involved in what I do in the personal branding space. And what I say to prospective clients is, are you coachable? In the sense that, I have to know how you're going to respond to the things that I am likely to say to you. You don't have to do everything I suggest or use every solution I propose. That's not the idea. But the idea is, are you open to exploring those other avenues of getting where you want to get to? Right. Because that's really important. But I really agree with the notion that, some clients are tougher to coach than others. We ourselves have probably been difficult, players at some time or another. Sure. you know, and a really, really great coach will get it out of us, will stick with it. And often their mindset is enough to turn us around. You know, we may not be succeeding with the mindset we want. I want to spend just a few minutes also talking about, as we do on the show, how you present your brand, your personal brand. How do you proliferate it? How do, as I mentioned, obviously when we met, that's one way, going to events and being you out in the world is a great
Right.
one. Definitely the way that you view coaching and other services that you use, people that you hire, and you're like, I'm going to be the best client they ever had, so that they will use me as a case study, an example, and that will get my message out there. What are some other things you do to get yourself in front of the audience that you want to be in front of?
So I'll share with you things that I do, and then I'll tell you a couple things that I'm not doing that I need to do, because I'm aware.
Oh, okay. All right,
but
good.
Everybody's got their priorities. And so I have a podcast. It's called the Business by Referral Podcast. Love podcasting. And I like to interview aspiring and emerging early stage 6-figure entrepreneurs who are out there networking, but not quite getting the results that they want. I give them an opportunity to talk a little bit about their own businesses and what they do and what their area of genius is. And then we take a look at their networking habits and their networking choices. And I do a little free coaching with them, which allows me to create some content that I can then chop up and use Descript and all fun AI tools and put it out there to the world. Right. So it's a little bit of a content creation fun thing to do. I do a LinkedIn Live every Tuesday morning with a 6-figure expert. So somebody who's working with entrepreneurs, helping them cross the 6-figure mark. And I really enjoy doing that. So that's on my LinkedIn every Tuesday morning. Again, we're about to build a YouTube channel. We're in the process of getting that all laid out. And so all of that's going to end up, also the podcast episodes will end up on YouTube. And so will the LinkedIn Lives, because as we learned from John Adams, YouTube, what is it? Google loves YouTube, right?
Yeah, right.
So we're getting ready to do that. I host a summit once a year. I do a giveaway through the Infinite List once a year. So, I mean, I'm out there and I'm pretty active, and probably the one place where, if you said to me, like, is there a place where you're embarrassed about your personal brand? It's my website. It fell apart. It got hacked, and then somebody messed with the themes. And it's like if you go there, it's directly to that website. It really is needs to go under a complete rehaul, because I had 4 different agencies. You'll appreciate this. Mistake not to make.
Yeah.
I had over the years, I had all these different people in there. And so I had like Beaver Builder and Elementor and Thrive and God knows what else. I had like 5 different theme builders on the WordPress site.
Oh and
God. So at some point, something happened and they all sort of converged and then created like word porn. It was just like, it was so bad.
That's hysterical, Virginia. That's like a monster, like a Frankenstein monster that was created from WordPress themes. That's terrifying. That is a nightmare.
It's horrific, right? So I need to just like unpublish it, kind of. But we have to get all of the freebies. Like I've got this this business by referral blueprint. I got to get that all moved over onto Go High Level. And a migration, like I had a WordPress site and I had Keep and I had Twilio and I had WePay and I had oh God, I can't think. Like I had like 7 different like building blocks on this thing, and then we go to move to Go High Level, and then it's the migration. You're like, I'm going to migrate this in 3 days, and nine months later you're still trying to figure out how to get it all migrated over. So it's coming right along, but your listener can get my blueprint if they want it at my website, and it'll go to a pretty little simple page, and you don't have to worry about seeing whatever that is.
Well, we'll include the appropriate links in our show notes, and I am confident that people will be able to find you, Virginia. Let's now look, and let's remember, you're alive, number 1. Number 2, you've done Machu Picchu, and you are back in business. So let's leave the audience. I like to give my guests the last word. Let's leave the audience with just a word of advice, to people who are building their own brands, one block at a time.
I think the most important thing about building your personal brand is to make sure that all along the way you are you and that you are standing for you, because the people around you will all have opinions about you and who you are and what your brand should be. But that comes out of really them and their story. They're branding you out of their story. So you want to make sure that you get to, if you're going to build your personal brand and you're going to get yourself out there, that you partner up with somebody like Hirsch who can see you for who you are and who can cut through his own clutter and really be able to see who you are and what your genius is and how you want to show up in the world. Because if your brand isn't kind of polarizing and it doesn't speak to some people, the right people, and keep away the people that you aren't perfect for your brand, then your brand's not doing its job. And so you got to be you. You can't be anything but you.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.